Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Charles, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Thank you so much for coming.
Guillaume. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. So let's jump straight into it. What first drew you into consulting and later into making trust your life's work?
The attraction to me for consulting was pretty simple. It was just the variety, the intellectual feast of the whole panoply of business. I had a liberal arts undergraduate degree, so when I went to business school, it was all pretty new to me. I was a philosophy major. I really knew nothing about business, and I was just intellectually fascinated by it. And I was lucky to get a job in consulting. Normally, that required somebody with serious background, which I did not have, but I managed to do it. And that was really the motivation, just the intellectual feast in front of me. As far as trust, that didn't. I spent 20 years in management consulting, half client facing, half internal staff, corporate functions. And at the end of it, I left and I was doing journeyman training work on my own for a little bit. And a friend of mine approached me and we started talking about ideas of making a book. And we got fixated on this notion of a trusted advisor. And as we quickly put it, gee, if we could write down all the stupid things we did, all the mistakes we made, and be helpful to other people so they didn't have to make those mistakes, that might be kind of cool. And one thing led to another, and we wrote the book. And I realized that this issue of trust really did encapsulate a lot of what I had learned in consulting. It was a good vehicle to look at the world of professional services and more broadly. So I glommed onto that.
I love this. So the fact that consulting only lets in someone with serious background, they let me in. So I'm not sure about that.
There's two of us then.
Fair enough. So I mean, that we might be the exception that confirms the rule.
Yes, I think so.
So tell us a bit more about the work that you're doing now, Charles. What problem do you solve? Who do you help specifically? Like, give us all the juice. What is it that you do?
Well, let's see. First of all, I should clarify. I founded and was the CEO of Trusted Advisor Associates, and I did that for about 22 years. 3-4 years ago, I turned over the company to one of my lieutenants. She now owns it. She now runs it. We still talk weekly. I'm sort of emeritus status. I'm involved. I talk to her every week. She has an advisory board. So when I say us, I'm talking not really about me anymore, literally, but the business which I used to run. We help organizations, mainly professional services and B2B sales organizations, not entirely, but mainly those two, develop more trusting and trustworthy approaches to their business, largely client facing. So I think most people got attracted to it because the term trusted advisor instantly has some kind of meaning to most people. They may not know exactly what it means, but they like the idea of it. So that probably describes the motivation for most of our clients. And we help them, as I said, in the field of sales and business development. We help them in terms of client relationships ongoing. That means we get into stuff like pricing, business development, repeat client expansion business, and just day-to-day getting along. Increasingly, we find people are recognizing that trust also has a lot to do with organizational effectiveness, team effectiveness, leadership, and we're finding people more and more interested in that as well. And they're absolutely right. Trust, if you have a trusted team, it beats the heck out of a team that doesn't trust each other. So there's room there as well. But it's mainly client relationships and business development.
How do you build trust?
It's a good question. It's a more complicated question than you might think. let me step back for a minute and set the context for that question. If you think about
Please.
the word trust, the noun, the word trust, is the word we give to a relationship between two parties, usually two people, but arguably an institution and people as well. And those two parties play two different roles. There's a trustor and a trustee, one who trusts and one who is or is not trusted. And if you have a sufficiently risk-taking trustor and a sufficiently trustworthy trustee, then it clicks and the level of trust goes up between them, and the dance starts over again. And people go back and forth. In a developing trust relationship, I may be the trustor 1 minute and the trustee the next minute. So how do you build trust? Well, you need to work both sides of that. One is to be more trustworthy, and we can talk about the trust equation, which goes into that. And the other is to be more trusting. So we help people on both fronts. I think the most famous part of the book, The Trusted Advisor, and continually a big anchor of what we do, is around the trustworthiness part of it. So how do you create more trust? You be more trustworthy. How do you do that? Well, we have this thing, which I know you're aware of, called the trust equation. And we could dive into that if you want. I don't want to step on your agenda here, but we can go into that whenever you want.
This is the magic of podcast, Charles. We go
Yeah,
wherever we want. So
that's true.
tell me about the trust equation. Go for it.
Okay, super. Many people, we're not the only ones, who've come up with some kind of conceptual framework for, what is trustworthiness? What does that amount to? All of them seem to have one thing in common. They have an element of what I would call rational, quantitative, calculating, data-driven, competency-based, to take a broad term, and the other part, something more emotional, relationship-based. In our equation, we use it in an equation form. There are 4 variables, 2 for each of those. The equation is credibility plus reliability plus intimacy, all divided by self-orientation. Credibility and reliability, I think, are the ones that people obviously get. Credible means, am I good at what I do? Expertise, capabilities, credentials. Reliability is track record, dependability. Do I do what I said I would do? Do I have a track record of it? Those are the 2 fairly obvious parts. The intimacy, which is the third one in the numerator, it's an unusual word in the business context. We picked that intentionally. It means sort of emotional safety. If I tell you something, am I sure that you're not going to laugh at me? You're not going to blab it all over the New York Times and inappropriately use our relationship here. So kind of emotional safety. So those 3 in the numerator all are pluses. The more I do of those, the more trustworthy I am. The denominator, of course, goes the other way. Self-orientation. A high self-orientation is a negative for trustworthiness. And self-orientation, just a fancy word for saying, who am I focused on? Who am I paying attention to? Selfishness is one extreme version of that. If I'm in it just for the money, obviously I'm not going to trust you very much because your motives are all about you. That's not the bigger problem. The bigger problem in self-orientation is just neurotic self-obsession, always worrying about yourself. How am I doing? How's it going? Do they like me? Who are they paying attention to? How come they're all looking at me? How come nobody's looking at me? Anything that obsesses you with your own self, which has the effect of removing you from being present in an interaction with another human being. So the simple ability to pay attention truthfully, with your full consciousness and pay attention to the other person you're talking to, that's a big variable. And it turns out we developed a quantitative version of that. We call the TQ, like EQ and IQ. So what's your trust quotient? And about 250,000 people have taken it at this point. And when you analyze some of that data, it turns out if you use regression analysis, you can figure out the most powerful parts of that equation, which people are always, and it turns out, contrary to most people's expectation, it's not credible and reliable. It is intimacy by a small margin is the number 1 factor, the most powerful affecting trust. And the second place is self-orientation. If you equally weight them, the equation makes it look like self-orientation has 3 times the power. If you equally weight them, it's intimacy and then self-orientation. So the 2 emotional components are actually the ones that have the greatest power in influencing trustworthiness. Let me stop there. I've talked for too long on that issue. You can direct me.
It's good, and I like the tangent that we are taking. So I have one question that I want to ask you, Charles, which is a bit like of a challenging one.
Sure.
Back to your point around money, right?
Yeah.
And like, okay, if everything you're doing is just for the money, you're less likely to be trustworthy. What if the person is very upfront about the fact that they're in
Yes.
here for the money, and it's just like, okay, full disclosure, my goal is to make money, but I know that in order to make money, I need to provide value for a long time horizon enough and build trust that I will deliver on the money that I'm receiving.
Yeah.
Then it's like it's very transactional, don't get me
Yes.
wrong,
Yeah.
but can you not associate trust with money when it's properly framed?
Well, quickly, yes, yes, you can, in exactly the way you
Mhm,
said. In fact, John Gutfreund, who I think I got the name right, was a managing partner of Goldman Sachs years ago, famously said,
mhm.
"We are long-term selfish, long-term greedy, or selfish. I forget which
Sounds
word
about
he used."
right.
Meaning, yeah, we're in this business to make money. That's why we're here. We're investment bankers. We like money. We want to make money. But he carefully said, we fully believe and recognize and trust that the way to do that is to help our clients first make their money. And if we do that, we have faith that we too will make money. Now, the difference is
Yeah,
critical because the more transactional you get and the more you phrase it as our goal is to make money, the less people are going to believe you and the less you will believe it yourself. So I always tell people, like in sales, for
interesting.
example, if your goal is to get the sale, that's high self orientation. That's all about you. That is seller centric. If your
Mhm.
goal is to make money and you do it, by the way, by helping other people, that's not quite as good. If your goal is to help other people, period, and you do that by getting a sale or getting money, that's a little different. That's deeper. That's richer. So there's still some parsing to be done. It's really what's your ultimate priority. The best way I tell people to think of it is you get rich as a byproduct of focusing on helping other people. If your goal should be to help other people, if you do that, you're going to do very well yourself. Once you start making it the ultimate goal above all else, you're down the wrong path.
Amen to that. It was a hell of a tangent, but I loved it. So
Yeah.
back to you, Charles. Who is it that you're helping specifically? So you're gonna help people build trust and make trust part of their whole ecosystem when it comes to B2B sales, sales and business dev, pricing, expansion of business. But who is it that you help specifically with that?
Well, I have kind of an odd answer to that. It's people, individuals. What I find more and more is if let's say I do a webinar for 50 people, I kind of figure if I help three people on that call, if I see three people going, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. That's really cool. That means I could do that. Bingo. That was a good webinar. 3 out of 50. I have a low bar. And I do think it's individual. I don't care whether they work for HR, whether they're client facing, whether they're a junior in business development. It doesn't matter. I think I kind of believe in the infectious disease model of corporate change. It kind of doesn't matter where you start. It's more helpful if you get the leaders hooked in, but it doesn't matter. Everybody has a lot more agency than we tend to think they do. In fact, one of the pushbacks I get from people, well, I love this stuff, but my boss, I could do it, except my boss won't let me. He focuses on short-term goals. And I tell people, you know, don't worry about it. First, in the long term, if that continues to be true, if you're hamstrung by bosses who won't let you behave in a trustworthy way, you got the wrong boss. You're in the wrong company. But honestly, in the short term, if you really were able to transform yourself into a person who behaves in trusting and trustworthy ways in all your interactions with all the people around you, it will not take long for it to show fruit. A couple of months. That's true at the team level. I think it's true at the corporate level, although that's much harder to prove. So I think, don't, I'm talking to people, individuals. I don't care where they are. And I've seen, accountants, actuaries, even lawyers who are the toughest case. If they get it, they can have an impact their lives and their business. So I'm a little agnostic as to who gets it.
So how would you say your business is positioned? Is it B2C then? Because at the end of the day, it's individuals within
Ah,
organizations. Is it more B2B? Like,
and I never thought of it that way. I would say it's B2B, and we happen to.
right.
I believe in the relationship of individuals in a
Hmm.
business. For example, here I'll go off a bit of a tangent. Years
That's
ago,
what we do.
the good the public relations industry started off with two possible ways. I think and I don't remember the names, but Andrew Carnegie had steelworks and in Pittsburgh, and they had a strike, and he called in military violent forces, police forces, and they shot and killed several strikers. Well, that was a huge public relations debacle. You're not supposed to kill your workers. And they called in this person, and he said, well, here's the first thing we do. We shut down public communications. We make absolutely sure that nobody ever again dreams of shooting strikers. We fix that around the whole company. And then we go public and we say, here's what we've done. Here's who we are. So that's one approach to PR. The other approach came with a guy that was given a contract by one of the cigarette companies to make cigarette smoking attractive to women. And he developed an advertising campaign, a promotional campaign. Those are two different ways that the PR industry could have gone. One was outside in and the other was inside out. I believe they should have gone inside out. They didn't. The PR industry is now largely outside in. So if you have a public relations crisis, get on the air, flood the message, get ads out, look more sympathetic. That's what Exxon did with the Valdez and so on and so on and so on. But I do think if you want to make an organization more trusting and trustworthy, trust-based, I think the better way is to do it inside out, which means you start at the individual level, not at the mass level. You can't make an organization trustworthy. You can make a bunch of people trustworthy. If you make enough of them, then the organization becomes trustworthy. If you actually were able to get, everybody or almost everybody behaving in those ways, it would not take long for the world, including suppliers and customers, to recognize it. If you try and exert that change at the corporate level, A, it won't stick very long, and B, it takes longer, I think, to counter that public opinion.
I like that. But so who is the person that you need to convince? Because you're going to help, so the individuals in HR, in business development, you're going to help them be better at building trust. Like, is that something that they feel they need themselves? Or is that something maybe their manager or the leadership of a company is like, we have a trust issue. We need to, no pun intended here, the actual trust issue in the sense of the constraint of our business is trust. So we're going to give that training, give that coaching to our business development team so that Charles can teach them how to build trust and build rapport with their prospects. Or like, who is the decision maker of hiring you and your team?
It varies. Sometimes it's the HR people. Usually it's somebody in a business unit, somebody with some kind of line control. The HR people often end up executing it. They say, we want you to work with training. But HR is not usually the decision maker. They're the facilitator. Usually it's somebody in a position of some kind of leadership. For example, we had a long relationship with Accenture for many years, and that started off with the head of business development globally. He read my second book, Trust-Based Selling. He was aware of the first one, and he called me up and he said, we're rolling out a global thing next month. I need you involved in this. So came straight from him. Other times,
did he find your book?
Pardon me?
How did he find your book?
I don't know. I wrote 3 books over the years. The first one was The Trusted Advisor, which is far and away the most famous and best known. And it was never a bestseller, but over the years, we had a 20th anniversary edition come out a couple of years ago. I think it sold about 500,000 copies, which is not bad for a business. Yeah, not bad at all for a business book, really, up against Harry Potter and so forth. So I think it developed a little, momentum over time. I'm now at the point where we get calls from sons and daughters and nephews of past clients. So they've heard about it through their own internal network. But the book itself, in our case, has had quite a big impact on our marketing effectiveness. People have heard of it. If they haven't heard of it, they've heard of the term and they'll run across it. We're lucky in that regard. We didn't have to create a brand name. We didn't have to create, viability of a concept. It was kind of laying out there and we just laid claim to it. So that I think has had, we're fortunate that the book, the name has had a lot of impact on people coming to us. But the decision makers tend to be, business units heads, like I said.
And that does make sense. So you will have, it's so funny because in your particular case, which is actually the case of a lot of B2B coaches and consultants, The person that you're actually helping is not the person that makes the decision, who is not
Right.
always the person that facilitates. So in your
That's
case, you
right.
have the HR department who is going to facilitate, but the person seeing the need and making the decision is eventually the leader in the business unit. But the ones benefiting from your services are the individuals within that business unit, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
this. I like this book tangent because that's going to be the perfect segue into my next question. What has worked for you, business-wise, Charles, to attract those decision makers, make them aware of your brand? So there's the book, obviously, which I just checked on Amazon, has like 1,500 reviews. So clearly, you guys know
Oh,
what you're
wow.
doing. You didn't know that?
No, I haven't looked lately. That's good.
Actually
Good to hear. Thank
closing
you.
on 1600s. No,
Wonderful.
congratulations. This is impressive. So you have the book, obviously, but what else has worked for you to attract customers and make them become leads?
Right. Well, let's see. Let me slightly separate into marketing and sales, or beginning of the
Yes,
interaction and
yes,
further along. Let me answer the second
please.
part first. I think once we get in touch with people, however they get in touch with us,
Mhm.
the magic of trust-based selling, trust-based business development, lies in the fact that it starts, from the get-go, from the very beginning, from the
Yeah.
first moment you talk to people or even communicate with email. If you start behaving in ways that are deeply trusting and trustworthy, it shows
Mhm.
through very quickly. I'll give
How
you a
do you do
small.
that?
Well,
Sorry to
no, it's
interrupt, but that's just too good. How do you do that?
yeah, well, 1,000 different ways. You really imbue all the ideas of what it means to be trusting and to be trustworthy, and you start exhibiting that in your behavior. I'll give you a couple examples. When the Trusted Advisor first came out, I had two co-authors on that book.
Yeah.
We're all kind of equal, and the book began to have some success, and we immediately faced a question: what do we do with leads? What if people call up and say, "Gee, I want to have you come speak"? Do we share them around? Do we rotate them on a given basis, or is it just whoever gets the call? And we
Mhm.
decided among the three of us that the right way to do it, consistent with what we've written in the book, was to tell everybody, all of us, anybody who called, immediately on the first call, to say, listen, there were three of us on that book. You should pick the right one, because there's always a better fit with somebody than with somebody else, including us. So here's my co-authors' names, email, phone numbers. Call them as well as me. And when you're done talking to all three of us, you let us know who you want to work with, and that's fine. So we all did that. And it worked out great because, number one, from the very get-go, it showed we were not selfish, we were selfless. We were consistent with the principles outlined in the book. We were client focused, and we practiced what we preached. We lived what we taught. And so there's a simple right away. Another small example is I teach people in sales. The conventional wisdom says never mention price until you've established value, because people won't appreciate the value. And I think that's dead wrong. It's the question on everybody's mind. They want to know, right, how much is this going to cost? So answer the question, be transparent. That's a big virtue in trust. So, and I tell people, listen, you get a few minutes in discussion and you say, listen, before one of us embarrasses ourselves, this feels like a low 6-digit or a high 6-digit, low 7-digit number. Are we talking in the same ballpark? Are our expectations okay? And the answer will come back, yeah, that's about what I thought. Good. We'll get the details later. Let's keep talking. But you've mentioned it. You brought it up. So you're responding to people's wants, not just their statements and their needs. And I could go on. There are 1,000 other. To tell the truth, for example, if you don't know something, say I don't know. Which ironically is more trustworthiness creating than anything else you can say. Most of us, as you know, having been at PwC and other professional service organizations, you know that most consultants will answer. They'll try and say, well, I know this, I know that, I know the other, we've done this, we've done the other, and they'll dance around the question. The truth is, if they don't know, very few people are willing to say, I don't know. And I tell people that's exactly what you should say. And then pause. Don't say, and I'll get it if you need it. Just say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And let it
That's a
sit there.
risky bet to say this, though.
It's not really. It's really not.
I like this. So back to your point around, hey, you should call, all three authors and
Yeah.
make your choice. So I like that philosophy a lot. The thing that I can't help but thinking as good marketer, dare I say, is the
Yep.
friction that this creates. Trust, and I want to go somewhere with this, but I'm playing the devil's advocate on
Yep.
purpose. Trust creates friction because if you, and I'm not saying to that you shouldn't be trustworthy. I'm just saying that if you play on a spectrum from very not trustworthy and like absolute trust, if you're like at the absolute trust, you're creating so much friction. Like, oh, you should call and email my two other authors, talk to them for 1 hour each, see which one you vibe the most with, and then call back the one that you want instead of like, yeah, sure, I can make it to your speaking engagements. So how do you? I guess that's an objection that you might get, right? How do you navigate this? How do you make sure that yes, you build trust, but you also keep it as frictionless as possible?
I'm not really sure I understand what you mean by friction. Can you just say a little bit more? That doesn't ring
Sure.
right to me.
So to take some marketing terms, right? You do some ads on
Yeah.
Facebook. The ad leads to a booking a call like button. You have the ad, and then the immediate button people have is book a call. So if the ad is performing well, you're going to get lots of calls in, but you don't have any friction, which means you
Ah,
will get everybody and like probably some unqualified prospects. Whereas if you do your ad that performs well, and then you put an option to book a call, but before that, they need to answer 5 questions that will
right.
pre-qualify them. You're adding friction.
I
So
see.
you will let less people in, but at the same time, the people that will get in are much more qualified. So
Yeah.
for the example that you've mentioned around what happens if someone calls and be like, hey, I read the book, it's amazing, I want you to speak at my next event whatsoever, and you're
Yeah.
like, cool, here is the phone number and email address of my two co-authors, you
Yeah.
should talk to them first as well, just to make sure that you're inviting the right one.
Yeah.
This adds friction. It's like, I'm
I
an
see.
event organizer, I'm busy, I'm like, I want to go
I
as
see.
fast as possible.
Yeah.
That's what I mean with friction.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Well, two
My,
things.
my pleasure.
Number one, I may have spoken too literally, or maybe you heard me too literally. I don't actually, we don't actually answer the phone and say, well, first you have to talk to all three of us.
Okay.
It's more an offer. It's like, you should, by the way, not just talk to me. I have two co-authors here. And if they
Right.
say, I'm an event organizer, I haven't got time, I already looked at you, I want you. You say, that's fine. I just want to let you know. You can always talk to
Cool.
these other two guys, but let's talk. Let's go on. So you
I like that.
respond, in the moment. More broadly, you raise an interesting question. We've never done ads. We don't do Facebook. We don't do Instagram posting. We don't put ads in LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm not recommending that. We are lucky enough, as I said, that the book itself and the book title generated an awful lot of enthusiasm. And also, in our case, we did a huge amount of content over the years, well over 1,000 articles, blog posts, etc. I used to put them out, 3 a week, and they're still there in the library. And we got video clips and um, um, ebooks and all kinds of stuff. So for us, massive content was also a marketing tool. I didn't intend it that way. It was more, documenting ideas that we had, but it served that function. So if people happen to find their way to the website, or if they go there on research, I don't care how they get there, they'll see an awful lot of stuff. And I think that has an impact also.
I like that. So let's wrap this conversation around marketing, Charles. So book, certainly. Speaking in engagement, I guess, because you've been
Yep.
invited thanks to the book. No ads. What else has worked for you in order to attract those HR people, those leaders within business units, so that they come to you and be like, "Hey, I'm interested." What else have you done that worked for you?
I First of all, I don't want to claim that we're the best marketers in the world. I don't think we are. We're not. But I think we have done one thing right, which is probably put more emphasis on repeat business, expansion business, client follow-on business than other firms. We're not monomaniacally focused on building the pipeline and finding new clients, which most people in marketing and sales today are. They, to figure out the ICP, individual client profile, and flood them with targeted messaging. We have not gone in that direction.
Mhm.
And part of it is because, again, I come back to that idea of how do you change an organization one person at a time. So we like to focus on persons. And I recommend in general people spend more emphasis on expanding within who you know. If you're in business like you are, like I am, you already know an awful lot of people. Every one of those people has an extraordinarily large numbers of issues. And if you engage them in conversation, it's amazing how many issues will come up, some of which you can address, not all by any means. But if you get somebody talking about their business and what's going on, it's amazing what comes up. And I think we have intuitively built that. So uh, people in even in just workshops, for example, people will say, "Gee, this applies to my personal life too." No kidding. Tell us more. Give us a couple examples. Well, we could use this for our internal consulting as well. No kidding. Let's talk about that. It expands naturally if you're open to it rather than constantly focusing, which I think the bias of marketing is, constantly focusing on strangers who you've never met and trying to connect, on some abstract basis. The entire sales industry, you probably know this already, runs about 20-25% closure rate, which is down from 30-40% years ago. And honestly, if you have a 25% closure rate, your problem is not pipeline. Your problem is you don't know how to sell. And the biggest part of that is look at who's in front of you. Look at who you already know. Expand your business by expanding your network and your relationship. So I think we've instinctively gone in that direction. And that, of course, is its own form of marketing, but different than what most people usually talk about.
I like that philosophy. I like it a lot. And I don't have anything against ads, just to be clear. No
Right.
outreach, right? I think
Nor
those
do I.
are methods that can work if done properly. But I
Right.
like the philosophy of like, since our whole brand is trust, let's use the channels that leverage trust the best.
Yes. Yes.
Which
Right.
leads me to ask, what do you think about podcasts, Charles?
I like podcasts. I had one myself for a couple of years, several years ago. I was a little early, and early on in the podcast development. I think they're
Okay.
great. I do a lot of guest podcasts like this one. I tend to say yes to these because they're a great way of getting the message out, letting people know, particularly if it's not totally aimed at me. I mean, this is your podcast. I want to be contributing to you to give you a successful piece of work to head of. It works for me too. So yeah, I think it's a good use.
Good, amazing. So you had a podcast. I'm interested into digging into this, but I know we are limited on time. So let's give the audience the juice that they usually come for on consulting leaders. So we talked about sales already. That's actually the first part that you covered within marketing versus sales, which I like a lot. One
Right.
question that I meant to ask you, Charles, is once you start working with a client, and I like the changing a company starting with one individual, but how do you retain, which is in coaching and consulting the crux of the game, right? If you
Right.
manage to retain your clients, you can grow exponentially. So in your case, how do you do that?
Again, I think it's an extension of the whole ethos idea of being a trusted advisor. If you're constantly focused on your clients, if you're constantly curious, you remember that phrase ABC, always be closing from sales? Forget the C part. Always be curious. If you're constantly
Nice.
curious, focused on your clients, then number one, your your self orientation goes way down. So using the trust equation, you have low self orientation. If you're constantly curious and interacting with people, asking why, tell me more, how does this work, what does that work, um, people will talk to you and they'll let you know what's going on. So if that's your default mentality, it feeds itself. People will bring issues to you. Do you think this could work over here? Let's talk about that. That's interesting. Yeah, I think it could. And you have those kinds of discussions and you end up being in other parts of the organization. So I think, again, my view of the way this stuff works is one person at a time. You get people to understand what it means to be trusting and trustworthy, and you work that, you live that every minute of your life. It begins to take over the way you interact, not only with clients, but your coworkers, suppliers, whatever, your friends. It works, and people who behave that way are innately curious. They generate more interactions, and some of that ends up in business. It's not that you target it; it happens as a byproduct of changing who you are. Hope that doesn't sound too abstract, but that's how I look at it.
No sense. It's so I like how aligned you are, Charles. For me, that's the key
Hmm,
takeaway of this episode.
interesting.
Like everything breathes, breathe. Oh my God,
Great.
I'm losing my English here. Thank you.
By the way, your English is excellent.
Trust. Thank you. Trust and building that trust. And I was going to say at scale, but that's the whole point. Actually, it isn't at scale. It starts with the little things, the little one-to-one relationships, one-on-one interactions,
Yes.
which compounds over the years. I mean, the book is 25 years old now, and it still gets read by people. And you have leaders, world leaders of Accenture level companies reaching out to you because they've read the book and they're like, hey, here is the credit card details. Like, let's rock and roll. So it
Right.
shows that everything that you're doing compounds as long as you're willing to wait for a long enough time horizon, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah. Yep. Agree.
One last question for you. Oh,
yeah.
One last question for you, Charles. What's the next big thing for you? What's the challenge that you're looking at solving now that will allow you to take the whole thing to the next level?
Well, again, I'll speak sort of not me personally, because I'm now 80% retired. My own personal goals are to keep doing things like this, get the word out. But back to my company, which I no longer own, but I'm still affiliated with, I think there's several challenges. One of them is at the friction point between AI and trust, and there's all these concerns. How do we handle deep fakes? How can you trust anything you read? I'll give you an interesting example. I heard a podcast the other day with Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, and he was describing these new eyeglasses that he's coming up with. And he's very proud of the fact that they developed to put a high quality image in the upper left-hand corner of one of the lenses so that while you're talking to somebody, you could be looking into AI and exploring ways to inject more content into the conversation. And he's very clear. He said, you got to be careful, because if people sense that you're talking to somebody else or not paying attention, they'll turn off. So it has to be very subtle. Now, what Mark Zuckerberg said there is, I'm lying to you. We want to facilitate the ability to make you lie to the people you're talking to make them think that you're not, think that you're talking to them and you're really not. That's what he said, honestly. So I think that's horrible. Now, by contrast, a good friend of mine, David Brock, is a sales author. He's written 4 or 5 books and 4,000 articles. He's using AI to generate new books based on his old material. And one of the things he did, he's already published the first one, and he made co-author Claude from Anthropic. He said, I co-wrote this with Claude. And he even has a foreword from him and a foreword from Claude. Now, that's transparency. That's him saying, I'm using AI. Of course I am. And they're my co-author. I'm proud of it. So he's being clear, transparent, and open. He's not lying to anybody. Well, guess which one is more trustworthy, more trust creating? It's my friend David.
I wonder.
Yeah, right.
I like that a lot. Charles, thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders. If people want to find out more about you, what you do, your book, where should they go?
You can find the book anywhere you want, Amazon.com, etc. You can go to the website, trustedadvisor.com. That's spelled O-R, the English spelling, trustedadvisor.com. I'm there. All the materials are there. Awful lot of free stuff. Take the trust quotient test by yourself. Trustedadvisor.com.
We'll put all the links in the description. And what I can say for sure is that you've gained at least 1 connection on LinkedIn out of this, Charles. Me. I just added you.
Thank
Charles,
you, Guillaume.
Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.
Nicely done.